You guys hear me well? Okay, good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roman Makarchuk. I'm Senior Director of Software Engineering at Intellias, and we are a custom software engineering services company, helping organizations turn bold ideas into the scalable solutions. I hope this conference was the rewarding experience for you so far, and you've absolutely absorbed the lots of inspirational ideas. And just to piggyback of that on an AI discussion and panel that our colleagues from Connectbase facilitated, I'd like to talk today about how to take a step further on this topic, and basically what are our observations as a software engineering services partner in this industry. And the topic of my today's conversation and presentation is Pragmatic AI, right? Pragmatic approach on how to move beyond POCs, pilots, and to truly unlock the enterprise value of scaled AI. So let's see if it works. Oh, yeah. So before we dive into some interesting findings by Boston Consulting Group, let's recap on typical innovation expectation from the business owners, C-suite, execs teams, and so on. They typically have the constant high demand on new technologies, and this always comes with different sorts of business-specific questions. So how do I grow and increase efficiency? How can I increase customer satisfactions? How can I increase revenue per employee? And just to name a few, right, of those. And the promise of AI is having all the answers at your fingertips. At the same time, according to the BCG report, and basically, I think Trey was referring to MIT report early on, only 4% of those who try those AI transformations actually seeing some successful results. And some would see like 50% of revenue increase, some would see the 40% of ROI, some would see combined benefits, but still only 4%, right? And we can relate to this because we also see it working with some of our clients or observing how they do it. Most of the companies, according to the BCG report, 80 to 70% actually either failing to hit their ROI targets or generated zero shareholder value. Maybe, of course, they also failing to recognize it or report it properly, but that's what it is right now, right? So they seemingly encouraging individual success. They have this siloed departments to start the POC, start the copilot, and so on and so forth. But it's always stay as a POC and never moves back past to the full adoption. So before we actually continue with AI, let's actually deep dive in something that happened in the past, right? The same or similar technology adoption cycle back in 1960s, and we all know the story, especially for those who've seen the nice movie about it. I'm talking about Ford versus Ferrari competition in Le Mans 1966. And why are we making this reference, right? Because basically the backbone of the story was Ford releasing this nice, beautiful looking and super powerful, if you look at specs and papers, Ford GT40, which should technically and on paper actually just smash the competition, should kick the Ferrari out of their game completely. But in reality, they're failing one after another, and the three major reasons, let's call it like this, were basically was lack of any real-world experience with this specific model, with the specific cars, and with racing in particular. Then leadership and cultural constraints, though Ford was maybe still is, big bureaucratic organization and not really focused on winning, rather focused on selling, focused on marketing and so on. And then complexity that comes with the innovation like this caused lots of failures, brakes failures, aerodynamic failures, the overheating problems, so on and so forth. So how do they solve it and why it's relevant for our discussion here? Basically, at some point, Ford introduced Mr. Shelby, who actually started leading this program, right? And he started leading it full pragmatic style. He returned back to the basics and returned based to the physics of the process, right? So he started with engineering principles. He got his wingman Ken Miles, who was pilot of the car, and they did a lot of lab testing. They did a lot of testing in races, focusing on reliability, cooling, and all this physics that come into play when you do the endurance competition. They also stayed clear on on the goals that they set, right? The goal was to win, not to sell the most cars like this. It was a winning car, and that's why the whole team that was working there and that was utilized by Mr. Shelby was actually focused on winning. So every decision, every engineering change, every strategy that they were deploying, they were all focused on this ultimate goal. And then after all this basis and foundation were laid out, only then they started to improve. And basically after that historical win in 1966, we've seen lots of wins by this team and lots of improvements further on. So now let's get back to AI at this point, right? So how it's relevant, right? Well, it's relevant in the same manner because basically we're talking about, before diving and trying the POCs here and there with siloed teams, it's actually stopping and thinking about how this AI adoption is happening on enterprise level and whether all of the goals that we set, not just to try something, but actually business goals that we set to deliver are taken into account. So why we think this case was relevant, as example was relevant, because basically building sustainable, scalable AI, it depends on starting thinking differently about software engineering itself. So you first start with putting the engine into the engineering, right? So we first start with empowering your teams, not just engineering teams, by the way, with the proper tool set. You think about the architecture, data, and AI governance, how you work with the tooling, and how you make it available for your teams. Then you expand successful scenarios across the enterprise. So you make other teams use it, you make other teams aware of this, and make basically them use the same ground principle laid out. And then you scale for those that really impact your business, right? So you don't just scale some fancy demos that has no real meaningful. You scale only those that really gets your numbers, gets your goals solved, and so on. And at the same time, when we look at the market, I mean, at current market of AI companies and AI vendors, what we'll see, we have like at least 4 categories, right? We have AI vendors, those are making all the headlines, you see them in the news. These guys have the AI native, right? So they build the products, they build the services that we use. At the same time, they super focused on those. They train in LLMs, they train in chatbots, and so on and so forth. They're not necessarily focused on the business cases. So your business cases, they have either limited capacity to tune up to it, or they don't even look at this because they have bigger fish to fry, so to say. Then the other category of the strategy and consulting, typically those are highly experienced in theory, strategy, and transformation design, but then lower capability in actually execution of this software engineering transformation. Legacy IT services providers, those are often and still fixed on the headcounts, like how do I sell you more teams, more FTEs, and how actually I solve any problems with headcount instead of thinking smarter and efficiently. And probably the best position is niche providers. Those are quite often would have the knowledge, have the capability. The only downside you may have is actually they are not really scalable. So they're not really able to do this on a global scale, on a bigger rollouts, and so on. So how's Intellias then different, right? So first of all, we are uniquely positioned because of our sites. We have 3,000 engineers across different countries, Europe and North and Latin America. So we actually seen both good and bad cases, right? And of course, I would like to say that we only touch the best cases, the best pilots and everything. Of course, we have touched the failures as well, but we probably can say that some of our clients actually made it to this 4%, and some of them have seen 5x speed to revenue for new products. Some of them have seen 10x ROI for top performance POCs and pilots that they were trying out, and some of them have seen 90% of customer support demand reduction, which is significant, right? And what's the answer then? What's the secret sauce that we have? Our secret sauce is AI pods. It's a new concept, and it's based basically on the teams that are not scaled through the headcount. They rather scale through the AI-assisted, AI-empowered toolset. So the old way of doing things, and you would see a lot of vendors doing that still, you would just deploy teams of 8 to 10 people, 2-3 week cycle, and they would have really specific roles like product design, requirements collection, testing, coding, deployment, it. And they would take it, in the cycles, and they eventually deliver something, right? but you stuck with the headcount, you start with the really specific roles, whilst the new way AI pods is basically looking at these roles and seeing how we can combine, how we can empower some of the roles, like having the AI product manager, for example, with specific product management agent that will sit on top of the whole project portfolio of the company and will know the context of the whole business. Or having the AI-empowered engineer, right, who will have not just Copilot, but who will have the whole code base, the whole test cases, and the whole basically understanding of the not just his isolated piece of work or product, but overall system or platform. And so on, right? So instead of 8 to 10, we will have 4 to 5, and they will have a proper tool set. So basically, they would be empowered to do more with less headcount, but more with tools, rather, I would say. So the team structure is leaner, the product discovery is faster. You have prototyping done faster, not in weeks, but actually in days sometimes. You have proper tools, not just sitting there and waiting for someone to use, but actually use to deliver. And with this model, quite often with our clients, we're able to get into the end-to-end managed model. So we actually able to guarantee and take the risk of deliverables and say, okay, you just pay us when you have the outcomes and you see the results impacting your business. So in principle, what I just described, that's not just AI-enabled engineers, right? It's something that's called citizen development. It's a new concept where every role in your organization could be empowered through this tool sets, through this platform and architecture, basically. And this way, you have more power to the people, right? You have more power to the self-organized teams who can build something, who can try different approaches, who can ideate quickly, and who can get the best ideas to the market quicker. And how to get there, right? So just like in 3 simple steps, let's call it like this. So first you have learn phase, basically where you get to understand the infrastructure needs of your company, like what type of knowledge database we should be sitting on top of, what kind of code base we should be considering, what type of orchestration is needed, so on and so forth. From that learn base, you apply it to train phase. Train phase is basically when your whole product family is taken into consideration, right? Your when needed and what are the appropriate connectors you might need from all the popular tool sets. Then what kind of platform components you need to have in place, or AI Foundry components, right? It could be Azure, could be AWS, could be GCP, which we recently signed on. So basically, what are the almost like a railway system that you should lay out before you start actually with implementation. And then when it comes to implementation, you have the tools, you have the governance in place, you have the ability of teams to work along these guidelines and guide rails, and then they proceed with execution. And Intellias' approach is quite simple. So we tend to sit in between. That's why we call it pragmatic. So one is fully out of the box. You just go there, buy it from OpenAI or Google or whatever, or you do the hyper custom development for some of our clients, if of course they have these multi-million-dollar budgets. We rather tend to think, pragmatically and how to combine all this, how to combine buying out of the shell products, adding the necessary tools, and basically make this specific to the business case of our clients. And I would probably skip this one because time is running out. I would just give you a couple of examples. It's not telco-specific cases, unfortunately, because I cannot really share the stuff that we do for our Tier 1 operators clients, but that's the customers that agreed to give references here. So one case study is the big European toll roads operator. It's span across different countries in Europe, and this means a lot of regulation and everything. And they started journey with us like 5 years ago. Specifically, AI journey was less than 2 years ago. First, they started experimenting with chatbots, deploying it on top of the database, ChatGPT empowered chatbot, and so on. But at some point, they say, okay, how do we move past that? Because we have every different country with different regulations, and we want to have our team members, not necessarily just engineers, our sales compliance engineers, actually being able to use this as well. So we went back and sat down with them and actually did the workshop and governance architecture workshop, decide what data we can use, where we can and how we can deploy it, and what are the optimal audience for this. And as a result, one of the latest examples that we're able to deliver jointly with their teams is this 90% reduction of support requests. That's a real business case that was painful for them. So we put all the effort there, all the effort into this goal. Another one would be closer to the basically to Connectbase business scenario. It's iGaming, it's not even close to telco again, but it's a company that has a lot of integration, like more than 500 different games, APIs, data inputs, and so on. Sounds familiar, right? So what they ask us, like every time the API changes, we have a painful process of updating it, of updating parameters and so on. Can you have like automated process here? One is for checking the API and adapting to it, and deploying the full cycle of application. And second is to actually test whatever is done there is working. So we developed two solutions for them. One is GenAI automation for configurations. So it tracks changes on API level and adapts automatically. And another one is this testing capability that will take the screenshot, detect what is changed or not changed, what's working, what's not working, and therefore they've seen much better result in faster configuration, less people spending time doing that manual work, less time testing that, 4x better scalability, and so on and so forth. And just wrapping up now, right? So basically, what we offer, right? So it's 4 pillars here. First, it's understanding how digital growth and transformation is specific to your business and how AI and can it really create any value for the specific business model and business goal that in front of you. Then it's basically consulting in deployment of the relevant tools, understanding what kind of solution architecture might be needed to facilitate that, not just copilots here and there or chatbots here and there. Then is actually AI engineering and product integration, right? So building it coherent ecosystem across all of the functions that you have, not just engineering, but also marketing, sales, network operations, so on. And then once it's set, once it's tried out and working, scaling, monitoring, and optimization of these solutions. And as a last slide, just how could it look like, right? So we're not talking about years of extensive development. We're talking about something from a couple of weeks to 1.5 months or something like that. So we start with discovery and AI readiness. So that's where our expert assess what you have, what your business goals, and whether you have the means of getting there, or what's missing, what are the gaps. Then we go and develop jointly with you pragmatic AI strategy. So what would be the tools out of the box, custom, mix, and how the roadmap would look like. Proof of concept, of course, to show that it works and it delivers reasonable results. And in the end, execution and scaling of it successfully across the enterprise. So that would be it from me. And if you're interested, we are here in the lunch area, table number 40. We're happy to answer any of the questions or inquiries you might have. Thank you for your attention. Have a good one.